Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Laura Binks, Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council. I would like to welcome you all to this Ordinary Council meeting of the 15th of February 2022. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Today we are meeting on lands of the Taungurung people of the Kulin Nation, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. This meeting is being held in accordance with Strathbogie Shire's governance rules and the Ministerial Good Practice Guidelines, MGPG-1 for virtual meetings. All our councillors and staff and guests are working remotely and alone, so there is no need for them to wear a face mask and you can see and hear them properly. Due to COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, this meeting is being held virtually. I wanted to take the opportunity to outline that voting at today's meeting will be held by a show of hands. If a councillor has a conflict of interest in a matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will commence until we are sure that they have done so. Councillors will be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote is concluded. If we have technical difficulties during today's meeting, which means we are unable to broadcast the meeting to the public, we will adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes. If the issue is not resolved after this time, we may extend the adjournment or even delay the consideration of unfinished business on the agenda to another day when the meeting is able to be live streamed. CEO Solomon, do we have any apologies this evening?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Yes, we have two apologies for this evening's meeting. There is an apology from Councillor Christy Hourigan and the Executive Manager, Communications and Engagement, Kristen Vavalora. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Councillors and council staff, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest to be made under Rule 94 of our Governance Rules and Division 2 of the Local Government Act 2020? No? Can't see any. Okay, I'll take that as no disclosures of conflicts of interest. Okay, councillors, the minutes from the ordinary council meeting, 14th of December 2021, and the extraordinary council meeting of the 1st of February 2022 require confirmation. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state your motion? Councillor Haysbert.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, happy to move the recommendation to endorse the minutes of the December meeting and the extraordinary council meeting held on the 1st of February.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Is there a seconder? Councillor Murray, thank you. Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? No? Okay. And can I get a show of hands, please? And great, carried, thank you. Petitions. CEO Solomon, do we have any petitions to be tabled at this evening's meeting?
Yes, Mayor Binks, we have two petitions to table this evening that relate to the proposed streetscape works at Strathbogie. The petition contain a total of 78 signatures. The petitions state, we, the undersigned, hereby register our concerns regarding the proposed streetscape works to the main Strathbogie Street area. We unanimously agree that the proposed Stage 1 medium strip renewal, specifically the inclusion of gum trees, is completely out of keeping with the current layout of the main street, which consists of various European tree types. Current streetscape, although on a smaller scale, is akin to other high country towns including Bright, Myrtleford, Mansfield, Alexandra, etc., where the inclusion of gum trees in the town centre would be seen as completely contradictory and unwelcome action for several safety, aesthetic and other reasons. Strathbogie has a wonderful walking trails and an abundance of native flora and fauna along the Spring Creek and Seven Creeks immediately surrounding the town. Any streetscape works must be in keeping with the current, attractive and historically significant streetscapes. We request to be kept informed of any progress or amendments to this proposal.
Thank you. Thank you, CEO Salomon. Councillors, we have a recommendation on page 3 of the agenda that the petitions be received and forwarded to the relevant Officer for Action and Response. Can I have a motion, please, councillors? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I recommend that the council lay the petitions on the table and then refer to the officers as printed on page 3, I think it is, of our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Dickinson, thank you. Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Nope. Okay, can I get a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Okay, great. I'll declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, so councillors, it's over to you now to make your reports. Would any councillor like to make a report to the public? Councillor Haysberg.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for that. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate the Euroa Community Action Group under the leadership of the President, Laura Baker, on putting together their strategic plan, which is now up on our Share Strathbogie website for feedback from the community. It's a very professional document and I'm proud to endorse it with its clear goals and outcomes, advocating for the best outcomes for the Euroa community. I also note that Avenel Active is also in the preparation stages of their strategic plan, and I look forward to seeing it in more detail. They're currently looking for your input also on the Share Strathbogie website. I know that Council is very happy to be able to assist action groups in this way, and so I encourage other action groups within the Shire to reach out if they need assistance with their strategic plans. Another new exciting phase in the area of waste is the rollout of the new purple glass bin, which will be coming to the Shire in 2025. Yes, that is a while away. However, we're asking you to think about how this might look in line with your other curbside collections. So can you please also visit Share Strathbogie to vote, or you can reach out to one of your councillors and we can vote for you or give you any more detail about how that is to be rolled out. I'd also like to just let the community know that we are starting a series of meetings with candidates for the upcoming federal election, and we will be pushing a big agenda of projects that throughout the Shire with all sides of politics. Lastly, we'll be releasing our latest version of Council's Climate Change Action Plan to the community, and we'll be seeking your feedback. It's perhaps taken a little longer than anticipated, but I hope it'll be out next month and we're very keen to hear what you think of it. That's all from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, if you weren't aware, Go Fish in the Gambie was on the weekend, which brought a lot of people to our Shire, a lot of families and a lot of different people from around Victoria to and Australia, I might say. Quite a few interstate number plates there regarding fishing and a lot of prizes for that. So they saw our Shire at its best tilt with all the great weather we had. There was also a women's fishing clinic, which was encouraging more of the ladies and children to get into fishing. And I think it was a great event. Going to Gambie was certainly involved in promoting it, and the Shire was also right in the front foot regarding facilities and assistance with all the festivities. So it was a great event, and it showcases our Shire, and I think anyone who was there would agree it was a terrific couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would any other councillor like to make a report? Yes, Councillor Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start off by congratulating all those who've had some input into the Pitch My Project process that we've undertaken. We had a great response. Quite a few people have put forward their ideas, and we'll be working through those in the next couple of months. It's really good to see the involvement of volunteers across the Shire recognised in the Australia Day Awards, and I really congratulate those people who have been volunteering tirelessly in our communities and were recognised through that process. We're aware that of divergent views about that particular day, and as a council, we will have a look at that as time progresses. I'd also like to remind people that during these periods of really hot weather, one of the issues that we're being advocates for is energy resilience, and we're aware of some of the energy problems that we have throughout the Shire with brownouts and the like over the summer period. So we'll be looking at that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Did any other councillor want to speak? No? Okay, I'll give my report now. So firstly, welcome back to our ordinary meetings for the new year. Whilst it's our first ordinary meeting, we have all been working on many projects and matters over the summer period. In the lead up to the federal election later this year, we have compiled our priority projects for our Shire to advocate to the candidates. This important work of advocacy to other levels of government and authorities is a key role for Council to ensure that our project's goals and community's interests are known to all candidates and potentially allocated funding. I met with Dr. Helen Haynes, the member for Indi, as she visited Euroa, Ruffy and Violettown on February the 2nd to launch her telecommunications policy, requesting a $300 million budget allocation from the federal government to complete the NBN rollout. We all know how challenging it is to get and maintain a decent internet and mobile connection in our region, and we believe that the government needs to invest more to achieve equity in digital connectivity. Further to this, in early January, we submitted our priority projects, which fall in the seat of Indi, to Dr. Helen Haynes MP for inclusion in her budget submission to the federal government. Helen's invitation to her budget submission is a key opportunity for Strathbogie Shire Council to be heard at the federal budget table. We are hopeful for some funding outcomes from this submission and continue to work with Helen and her team to achieve the bigger projects such as energy security, the Sale Yards truck wash, greening Euroa and the Euroa Railway Precinct structure plan. And talking of the railway, last week we had an update from Ed Walker from ARTC, who advised us they are currently finalising all technical elements for both options. The ARTC are working towards completing the multi-criteria assessment to propose one option in April. Ed advised that there would be a further stakeholder meeting prior to April. I will keep the community informed of any updates on this front, and we will continue to advocate for the community on this important project. Last weekend, I had the pleasure of opening the Go Fish tournament at Nagambie on the Friday and the Nagambie on Water Festival on the Saturday. The combination of these two events for the first time was a great initiative of community groups working together with the private sector to deliver a fabulous community-focused event. Go Fish opened with a Women in Recreational Fishing Skills workshop, where the ambassadors for Go Fish ran clinics to encourage more women to take up recreational fishing. It was a really successful event, and I congratulate Karen Rees and GRT Events for working to create an inclusive event that encourages diversity in the sport. The Now Festival had perfect conditions for their day of water activities, and being located at the Central Festival Hub ensured that there was a buzzing atmosphere for locals and visitors to enjoy. Congratulations to Claire Sampson and the team of volunteers who ensured this event was a huge success. I'd also like to highlight the efforts of Goonagambie supporting the Now Festival to run their event in partnership with Go Fish. When we work together, we can achieve great results. I had hoped to be able to share a report of the Rainbow Local Government Conference I was to attend at the beginning of the month, but unfortunately, due to the current number of COVID cases, the organisation chose to postpone the event to an online format in May. And unfortunately, I'm unable to attend on the new date, but I do encourage my fellow councillors to consider attending this conference, which supports us in making our community safer and more inclusive and achieving real change for LGBTQIA+ people in our communities. Thank you. CEO Solomon, are there any questions from the public this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. There are no questions for public question time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. So we will now move on to the body of the agenda. And we have item 9.1.1, planning permit application P2020-162, use and development of a caretaker's house, change of use of existing building to museum, military memorabilia display and signage, 22 Nolans Road, Ruffy. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. This is the first of 6 planning permit applications on tonight's agenda. Item 9.1.1 is to use the current building for a museum for military memorabilia. A caretaker's house and accommodation area will be constructed on the first floor above the museum display area, and signage will also be displayed and car parking will be provided on the site. The subject site is located in the farming zone, and as part of the advertising process, there were 4 objections received for this application. Following the delegate assessment of the proposal against the objectives of the planning policy framework, the local planning policy framework, the relevant zone requirements, it is recommended that council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit subject to conditions. I know, Mayor Binks, there are a number of submitters who would like to speak tonight to this matter, so I will hand that over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tingay. I believe we have, my understanding is we have one submitter, which is Troy Spencer. Troy, if you would like to unmute, and you will appear on my screen, I believe. There we go. Thank you. Sorry, just juggling the digital life here. Troy, welcome. You have 5 minutes to make your submission. Councillors, I remind you, we can ask clarifying questions of the submitter, but we are not to enter into debate with the submitter. Troy, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, good evening. My name's Troy Spencer. I'm actually the applicant for this proposal on behalf of a client. We applied for this some time ago. It was a 2020 project of mine with the client, and the initial meeting was to look at it in terms of there was an existing use there on the site, which was a shed. It was a manufacturing of machinery sheds or farm sheds in the main street of Ruffy. It is next door to the cafe, and it's kind of opposite the hall. It's a big shed. It's got a large area in the front of it, and it's kind of somewhat landscaped from the past planning permission that was granted. And what we actually did was we met with the client to ensure that what he wanted to do was to bring in memorabilia, including vehicles, to be stored indoors only, and for people to come with that interest to the town and visit and look through the cars and the other items such as trailers and the like from the Second World War. There were actually a lot of other things included, signage just anything that's been collected over the years. A lot of the vehicles were not owned by the client; they were to be showcased there, and it was fairly low key, and moderate amount of people to be present at any given time. So really, the aim was to make sure that the residence that was being used in the past was, I guess, retrospectively given approval. That's the dwelling inside the shed. To an adequate standard. So Bruce McTeer helped us put together a set of drawings to make sure that it met the requirements for a building surveyor to sign off on this after the planning permit issues. The landscaping, the car parking, the wastewater, everything was dealt with under the planning application, and we just feel that it was a nice little thing to have in Ruffy, and probably fits in somewhat better than a manufacturing of sheds in the main street, and would bring visitors. So that's about it. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Troy. Councillors, are there any clarifying questions of Troy this evening? Yes, Councillor Andrews.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Troy, will there be any reenactments on the site, either with vehicles or groups, like a Gettysburg style, if you know what I'm talking about there, with firing or anything like that?
No, I think really the maximum amount of vehicles that could have been stored in there on proper display would have been only about 6 or 7 anyway. The inside's actually been made so that people can go inside and view them. There's nothing to really occur outside other than to park if a minibus came or if cars came. There would be no such thing as whatever you want to call it. It's not really for that. It's really just for pretty low key viewing and perhaps being shown around and explained what the vehicles were used for in the wartime.
So no future plans for that sort of thing?
No.
Thank you.
Councillor Rayburn.
Yeah, just through you, Mayor. Troy, just clarification, there is no ammunition going to be stored on site or used in any way at that site?
There won't be any live ammunition there. There was talk of a couple of items that would have been shells. However, when I went there on the premises, he said that he would probably not include them in the display, and they're more a collector's item, and perhaps people who got more interest in that may be able to follow him up with that. But they wouldn't be on display if he does have them. No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. And councillors, did you have any clarifying questions of the officer with this application? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 1 of the agenda tonight, that the permit be issued for this decision to be granted a permit in accordance with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there a seconder? Councillor Andrews. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Is there any opposition? No. Okay. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to speak in favour of this because I think it's another avenue of tourism which we are requiring in our Shire. It's something that I'm not all that in favour of a lot of war memorials and all this sort of stuff, but a lot of people are. So if we can give an opportunity for someone to present that in our community, to give opportunity for other people outside our Shire to come into here and spend their money and enjoy the environment of what our Shire gives to them, I think it's a positive way of going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I agree with Councillor Rayburn, and it shows what a diverse shire we are, and there's a lot of interest in militaria and other things like that. So if it's well managed per the conditions set out, then it should be an asset to the Shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay. Councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I get a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? None. Okay, I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors, and thank you, Troy. If you're not presenting at future items on our planning list, you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave the meeting.
I will be presenting again.
Okay, we'll see you again. Great. Hang in there. I'll just get you to mute until you're called again. Thank you. All right, we'll move now on to page 47, and it is item 9.1.2, planning permit application number P2021-122, development of land for a bottle shop and liquor licence, 25 Tarcombe Street, Euroa. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Item 9.1.2 relates to the development of land for a bottle shop with the associated use as a licensed premises for packaged liquor to be consumed off-site only. The bottle shop will be open until 9 p.m. under this application. The subject site is located in a Commercial 1 zone. As part of the advertising process, there were 7 objections that were received as part of this period. An on-site meeting was held late last year with the objectors where their concerns were discussed. Following the delegate assessment of the proposal against the objectives of the planning policy framework, local planning policy framework, the zone and overlay on site, it is recommended that Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit subject to conditions. I believe there are submitters also who would like to speak to this item tonight. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Yes, I've just turned the page and read my notes, and I see that our first submitter on this item is Troy Spencer. So welcome back, Troy. The same conditions apply here. You have 5 minutes to present. Councillors, you may ask clarifying questions, but you are not to enter into debate with the submitter. So over to you, Troy.
Thank you very much again for the time. Look, I act for Jenny Jones from 26 Tarcombe Street in Euroa. Jenny resides there. She has concerns in relation to moral obligations in relation to liquor consumption, the detriment to community health and community concern, and feels that it really needs to be further investigated as to whether or not this is meeting the national alcohol strategy in terms of reducing alcohol consumption in towns like Euroa with the lower socioeconomic status by 10% over in the coming years. We did a cumulative assessment for this for our client and presented it to the council planners with a letter that explains where we believe it doesn't stack up in terms of the liquor licensing. We think that it's considered to be located within what's deemed as a cluster of alcohol selling locations, and it's not, for us to, I guess, demonstrate this. It needs to be done by council planners. They need to ask the client, the applicant, to provide this information in order for them to make a final decision. We found that there was 20 liquor outlets already in the township, with 8 within 500 metres. We also found that the actual liquor licence, if this was to be approved, it would go from a population of Euroa, which is 2,768 people, equates to a liquor licence to every 138 people. If this was approved, it would then increase the density of licensed premises to one liquor licence for every 131.8 people. So it's quite significant. We think that there is probably a conflict with the planning practice note 61 prepared by DELP, in which they consider a cluster to be more than, well, including the premises, more than 3 liquor licences within 100 metres of one another, and that's what's happening in this instance. So I'd just like the councillors to have a look at the letter that we prepared and submitted. It explains everything in detail, better than I can remember off the top of my head. And there's also a plan. I know that I can't share it with you guys at the moment, but I'm looking at it, and I've made a plan of the township with a red dot on every licensed premise, and I've got a legend showing every property and all the ones that are within 500 metres. Yeah, I think it's there for you to have a look at, and you probably should look at it and question it and just see whether or not it meets the National Alcohol Strategy 2019 to 2028. It's a federal government national alcohol strategy, and it's trying to reduce this thing, not increase it. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Councillors, are there any questions of Troy? No. Oh, yes, Councillor Murray.
Troy, did you say there were 3 liquor licences within 100 metres of that particular application? And if so, right, can you detail that?
Yeah, so the 3 that are the closest, they've got the Temple Kitchen, the Seven Creeks Hotel, and there's also the Jumbuck. But the licensed premise that's being applied for is included in the cumulative assessment, and it has to be considered as part of that 3 within 100 metres of one another. So it's quite possible that the one at the Seven Creeks might just miss the 100 metres, but the other 2 definitely fall within it, and it together would be the cluster.
Thanks, Troy. Councillors, are there any? Hang on, we have another submitter. Sorry, I'm just getting back to my notes here. Thank you, Troy. Thanks for your submission. We have received your. Oh, yes, Councillor Andrews.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Through you, Troy, how far away is the closest actual, this is a liquor off-premises consumption, I read. How far away is the next dedicated bottle shop, if you'd like me to call it that way, please?
The next dedicated bottle shop is actually over the counter at the Seven Creeks Hotel. They're licensed to sell liquor to the public to drink off premises. So it's probably within 100, could be a little bit more. Actually, I've got it written here. It says Seven Creeks Hotel's 200 metres from the actual site.
Okay, thank you. But that's not not a dedicated bottles or liquor outlet, is it? A bottle shop.
It does actually have bottle shop status because it sells packaged liquor to be drank, to be taken away from this
off premises, yeah, as most hotels do. Well, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews and Troy. Our next submitter on this item tonight is Courtney Hamill. Courtney, if you can turn your video and your microphone on, I think you will pop up on my screen.
Good evening, councillors.
Good evening, Courtney. There you are. Thank you.
I'm Courtney Hamill, the Director of Hamill Agriculture. We're the investing party in this bottle shop. So we've received Troy's report, and I'd just like to point out a few notes on it. First of all, it hasn't eluded us that the client has a family member who holds a senior position in the pub and the restaurant that Troy's referring to. So there's significant sort of conflict there. With regards to the report, it refers to on-site consumption, a bar, a dining room, none of which are planned for or applied for. In addition to this, the report states in section 5 on page 6 that the proposal will not cause detriment to the off-site amenity. So that is a recommendation from that report that Troy has provided. The council town planners have determined that it's not a cluster. There is no liquor licences within 100 metres of the proposed bottle shop. One of the liquor licences Troy is referring to is the old Jumbuck, which you'll know is closed down. And the temple is further away than 100 metres. And again, that falls into that conflict of Mrs. Jones's family member having senior positions in those areas. The bottle shop fits quite neatly within the strategic direction of the Shire. It encompasses things like local wines and tourism and economic growth. So we're pretty happy with what the town planners have proposed in their recommendation and would be happy if you provided us with a permit. Thank you to the community for the massive support that they've given us and to the councillors for hearing us tonight.
Thank you, Courtney. Councillors, were there any clarifying questions of Courtney? No? Okay, councillors, I will, did you have any clarifying questions? Oh, yes, Councillor Haysberg.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to ask Director Tingay, so was the National Alcohol Strategy taken into consideration in this application? Yeah, sorry, that's my first question. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Binks. So as part of the assessment by the officers, certainly the practice note was taken into consideration, and that was issued by the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. Certainly within the officers' assessment, it does take into consideration what is considered to be a cluster, and as part of determining a cluster, if there is 3 or more included licensed premises within 100 metres of each other, it could be considered a cluster, or 15 or more within within 500 metres of the proposal. As such, there is no other liquor licensing within 100 metres of the proposed bottle shop that we are aware of. Certainly, we understand that the nearest premises to be the 7, it's a hotel, and also the Temple restaurant. However, they are both outside the 100 metre buffer zone. When the officers considered this application, they certainly considered that there is not a saturation point that has been reached by allowing this bottle shop, should councillors support the recommendation tonight. Whilst we acknowledge that there are other entities close by, they offer different offerings, so to speak, as part of each premises. The local police and also council's local laws were referred to as part of this proposal, and neither of them have provided an objection to this proposal.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Did you have another question, Councillor Haysberg?
I did. Thanks for clarifying that, Director Tingay. Quite a few of the objections that came through were around accessibility and the issues that this bottle shop could potentially provide to pedestrians. I just wanted to ask how have accessibility issues been addressed in the application?
Through you, Mayor Binks. In terms of pedestrian connectivity within the conditions of the proposed planning permit, there is provision for the applicant to construct a footpath directly out the front of the subject site. However, as part of this application, there is no provision to request the applicant to extend that footpath footpath any greater than what they are required to do, which in this case is around their subject site. In regards to accessibility more broadly, should this permit be issued, there is a requirement as part of this development and as part of any building development that the applicant does construct the buildings and works in accordance with Australian standards, and Australian standards take into consideration DDA compliance, ensuring that the infrastructure is developed and constructed to the requirements to ensure accessibility for all.
Does that, yep, you happy with those answers? Great. And Councillor, sorry, is it Councillor Murray that has your hand up? I can see another hand up. Yes, Councillor Murray, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, can I just ask the Director, when you talk about accessibility in terms of the footpaths, did you mean a footpath will be required both in Hunter Street and in is it Tarkham, the other street?
So just on the subject site, so there is already a footpath constructed in Tarkham, so it would be required in front of the subject site in Hunter Street, but only in front of the subject site. Given we are unable to provide any further conditioning to require the applicant to extend that footpath, for example, from Hunter through to Turnbull, for as an example, but the applicant would be required to construct that footpath directly in front of the subject site.
So just a subsequent question, does the footpath in Tarkham Street, does that meet the current standards of a footpath requirement?
In the day certainly that it was built, it would have met the requirements. However, we have not, as part of the proposed conditions for this planning permit, we've not asked the applicant to upgrade that footpath as there's one already existing.
So it may or may not meet the current footpath requirements.
In terms of when infrastructure is built, it is built in the day in terms of which the current standards were applicable. So without going to view that footpath, I cannot confirm. I presume it still does, but in terms of any maintenance that might need to be required to be undertaken on that footpath, obviously that would be subject to a condition assessment that is undertaken regularly by our staff.
Right. Can I ask about bike racks or bicycle sort of access? Is there any bike racks or bicycle access allowed in or provided for in the applicant's design or proposal? Through
you, Mayor, I'm sure that's something that the applicant might be willing to investigate. Whilst it's not part of one of the conditions, that might be something that the applicant might be happy to look at.
How will I know that? Sorry, Director. How will I be assured of that?
Through you, Mayor, you could certainly ask the applicant a clarifying question right now. But in terms of any permit condition requirements that have been proposed, whilst there is bike parking area stipulated on the plan, I'm sure that the applicant will be looking to include that as part of their final plans that they submit to Council for endorsement.
Through you, Mayor, could I ask our guest, Courtney, whether or not there is any provision for clarification of whether there is any provision for bicycle parking?
Certainly, Councillor Murray. Courtney, if you would like to answer the question that Councillor Murray is trying to clarify.
Thank you. There is bicycle parking. There is a small section of lawn at the front. It's sort of about 2 metres by 2 metres, I guess, with a post there. Otherwise, if it's, say, wet weather, there's a car parking area. There's some under roof access as well. I live within a few hundred metres of the bottle shop, and I would be riding there myself rather than driving. So I would expect there would be somewhere for me to park.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Are there any further clarifying questions of Director Tingay or either of our guests? No. Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysberg.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, I will move the recommendation on page 47 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Haysberg, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, I too would like to see the inclusion of some bike parking facilities. So thanks for that, Courtney. I've also heard loud and clear from the community that pedestrian connectivity is important in improving the livability in the township. And as part of the proposed conditions, I know that we can't extend the footpath down Hunter Street, but I will be strongly advocating for this in the upcoming council budget deliberations, as I know that it is important for residents on Hunter Street, and I would hate to think that they will be impacted negatively because of this decision that council's made, and making their lives more difficult with more cars coming in around that corner on Hunter Street. So I really hope that council will consider the continuation of that footpath to make it safer and more accessible, especially for those who are not able-bodied and have challenges with mobility. And also I hope to see the inclusion of lots of local produce, as we have a lot to offer in the region at the bottle shop. That's all from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillor Dickinson, did you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. As far as I can see and am concerned, it fulfils all the requirements. All questions were answered satisfactorily by Director Tingay. It isn't in a cluster, so I'm quite in support of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay. I will, councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I get a show of hands, all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, Troy and Courtney, for your presentations to us this evening. If you are involved with further matters in our planning section, please stay online. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to leave the meeting. Thanks, Troy. See you. We'll now move on to page 88, 9.1.3. Planning permit application number P2021-175, 2-lot subdivision, 16 Jones Street, Avenel. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. This item relates to a 2-lot subdivision at 16 Jones Street, Avenel. The lot currently measures approximately 2,024 square metres and it contains an existing dwelling. The application proposes to essentially split a line down the middle and create 2 lots, which would make each of the lots approximately 1,012 square metres in size. The subject site is located in the township zone. There is an existing dwelling on the site, and it is proposed that this dwelling be removed. There were 2 objections received as part of the advertising for this planning permit. Subject to the conditions, it is recommended that council issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit. Officers has assessed the proposal against the objectives of the planning policy framework, local planning policy framework, and also the zone. There's a recommendation commencing on page 88 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. I also understand we have a submitter wishing to speak to this item tonight, and Andrew Mott, if you would like to unmute and make sure your screen is on. Hello. Yep, there you are. Good evening. Andrew, you have 5 minutes to make your submission. Councillors, as previously, we can ask clarifying questions, but we're not to enter into debate with Andrew. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors, the executive management team. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the application for the 2-lot subdivision. Overall, for obvious reasons, we're quite pleased with the report that council's planners have provided and their recommendation for approval of the planning permit. We maintain on its merits the application meets the requirements of the Strathbogie Shire planning scheme for a 2-lot subdivision in the township zone. It's consistent with the intent of the Avenel 2030 strategy by making more beneficial use of the existing zoned residential land. It takes into consideration the existing character of the area, and by proposing a 2-lot subdivision only, as opposed to a subdivision of greater density, will allow future landowners to retain the existing established vegetation where appropriate. The proposed subdivision creates an additional allotment, only one additional allotment for the development of a future dwelling by a prospective purchaser. As I said, on its merits, we believe the subdivision falls within the state and municipal planning schemes. On a more personal note, which is not relevant to a planning application, I'm acting on behalf of the family. The landowners of the property are elderly, and I believe one of them is having treatment for an ongoing illness. So, in terms of maintenance of the existing dwelling and the yard, it's just become too much for them. Essentially, why the family is now looking to subdivide and provide themselves with an opportunity for a property that requires less maintenance. So, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to it. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillors, are there any clarifying questions of Andrew? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Andrew. I noticed you said retention of the vegetation on that block. There's some magnificent sort of trees there on that particular corner block. Is it going to be possible to retain much of the vegetation there?
Look, the application is for subdivision only. The existing vegetation there is not considered extensive native remnant vegetation. It has fallen into a state of disrepair insofar as some of the vegetation is probably reaching the end of its lifetime and is starting to drop limbs and so forth. And the rest of the vegetation at ground level just hasn't been maintained. As I said before, it's just the parcel itself has just become too much for the current landowners. So in answer to your question, I suspect that possibly not. However, that doesn't preclude some of the vegetation being retained by future landowners.
Thank you, Andrew. Were there any further clarifying questions of either Director Tingay or Andrew from the councillors? Yes, Councillor Andrews.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Through you. Andrew, you mentioned a dwelling down the track would be built in one of the parcels. Is that right?
Again, the application is just for subdivision. It's reasonable to expect that subdivision in township zone would lead to either further development or a dwelling being constructed. Certainly, that's not a part of this application.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. However, the as you're well aware, and most of us are, that Avenel's a very, very historic area there. And what sort of dwelling? You're not building a dwelling, but would any future dwelling you see be built in the style or the
Councillor Andrews, I'll just interrupt you. Because it's not the application that we're assessing tonight and voting on is relating just to the subdivision. So unfortunately, those questions are not relevant to this application, and I'm pretty sure that Andrew would be unable to answer that, because if the property were to be sold, it would need to go through the formal processes of an application to council, and there are processes and guidelines around what is and what isn't appropriate that application would need to go to.
No hypotheticals. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Okay, so I don't think there's any further clarifying questions. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I move that the planning, the sort of subdivision application on page 88 to 92 and the conditions thereon be accepted?
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Haysbert. Okay, is there any opposition to the motion? No. Okay, Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only in that the subdivision seems to me to be in keeping with the size of allotments around the area. It's a little bit smaller, but not a lot smaller than those adjoining. It is a property, as our guest has indicated, has run into disrepair over the last few years, and although there is some vegetation there that would be nice to retain, it would be certainly a positive step forward, I think, to have some development occur on that corner, which is appropriate to the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Haysbert, would you like to speak to the motion? Okay. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Nope. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I have a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us this evening for your submission. If you have further planning matters that you need to stay online, please do. Otherwise, you're welcome to log off, and thank you for your submission tonight. Okay, so we're now moving on to page 116, item 9.1.4, planning permit application number P2021-091, use and development of land for a dwelling at 7 Hill Close, Ruffy. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Item 9.1.4 is for the use of and development of land for a dwelling at 7 Hill Close, Ruffy. This application proposes for a 4-bedroom dwelling that also includes a media room and a family rumpus area, etc. So quite a large family home. This proposal is in the farming zone, and as this subject site is located in a farming zone and is less than the 40 hectare requirement for an as of use right for a dwelling. This parcel of land is identified in the 2004 Strathbogie Shire Rural Residential Strategy in Area 19. The area currently is used surrounding the subject site is used for rural residential purposes. As part of the advertising period, there were 2 objections that were received. It is proposed that access to this subject site is via the unformed road reserves. There is the planning permit application was referred to the relevant authorities with no objection. However, there is subject to a number of conditions. After assessing the application, in summary, the proposal meets the requirements of the planning policy framework, the local planning policy framework, and the farming zone. So, councillors, tonight there is a recommendation for a decision to grant a planning permit subject to conditions for this planning permit application. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. I believe we have a submitter wishing to speak to the item this evening, and it's Courtney Hamill. Courtney, if you'd like to turn your screen back on and your microphone.
Thank you, Mayor Banks. I'm happy if there's no objectors to allow you to go ahead and grant us another permit.
Thank you for staying on online. There's no other submitters to this application this evening, so yeah, thank you. Councillors, did you have any clarifying questions of the officer this evening? Councillor Haysbrook.
Thanks, Mayor. Director Tingay, is the unmade road reserve required to be upgraded by the applicant for access to the property?
Through you, Mayor Binks. So there is a requirement as part of the proposed conditions for this planning permit around that before the use begins, the developer is required to upgrade the unnamed road reserve access from Hobart Street to the satisfaction of the Strathbogie Shire Council. And within the conditions proposed in the permit, there are details about the requirements in which that access is to be developed and constructed.
Thank you for that. And can I just follow on? So if those are to be upgraded, is it likely that any native vegetation would have to be removed for those road upgrades?
Through you, Mayor Binks, I would need to take that on notice to confirm whether or not that is the case. But certainly not to my knowledge, no, but I cannot be 100% sure.
Okay, certainly, I guess what I'm hoping is that we can work around any significant vegetation that might be on the road reserves.
The requirement is certainly to undertake the development of the road in accordance with the relevant infrastructure design manual, which basically guides the requirements of the development of the road. But in terms of whether any trees or other significant vegetation would be required to be removed, I can't confirm that with you right now, but I'm happy to take that on notice.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Are there any further clarifying questions of the officer? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn, I saw your hand go up there.
That's okay, Mayor. I was just scratching my head, but I'm willing to move the motion to, as printed on page 116, to resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit in accordance with the officer's recommendation in the attached delegate's report and the delegate report, including the following conditions. So I move that way.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. It's I've got to be quick watching all these screens and what people are doing. Is there a seconder to the motion, please? Councillor Murray, thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I very much look forward to having this development go ahead up in Ruffy. Ruffy's a growing little town where a lot of people from the cities coming up there, but also other areas around the Shire. So it's good to see development going in Ruffy, and I look forward to the development and the upgrade of the road too, which will add benefit to other people utilising that area.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Nope. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we are now moving on to item on page 158, which is item 9.1.5, planning permit application number P2021-092, use and development of land for a 2-bedroom dwelling, Crown Allotment 8, Section G, 7 Hills Close, Ruffy. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Councillors, this is not deja vu. This is a second planning permit application for 7 Hill Close in Ruffy. This permit relates to a 2-bedroom dwelling. Similar to the previous planning permit application, this application, the subject site is located in the farming zone and is on a lot less than the 40 hectare requirement for an as of use right as a dwelling. This subject site is also identified in the 2004 Strathbogie Shire Rural Residential Strategy. The area is currently used for rural residential purposes. As part of the advertising period, 2 objections were received, and following the assessment by council officers in relation to this planning permit application against the relevant policy frameworks, there is a recommendation for you tonight to issue for a notice of decision to grant a permit subject to conditions for this application. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. I do have down here that Courtney may wish to submit, but I'll just check. We don't have any other submitters for this application tonight. Courtney, did you wish to submit anything?
No, but I can confirm for you that no native vegetation will need to be removed for that road. It's a road that we currently use during our farming business. So it is a dirt track and there are no trees on it.
Thank you for that clarification, Courtney, and thank you for your time joining us this evening as well. Okay, councillors, are there any clarifying questions of the Director on this matter? No. Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Andrews. You're on mute, Councillor Andrews.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I move that the application on page 158 of the agenda be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Okay. Does any Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. In line with what Councillor Rayburn said before, development of that area suitably would be a positive. And again, as people move out to the regions, we want some sustainable growth, and this sounds like it's going to be in line with those guidelines there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would any Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak? No. Okay. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay. Councillors, I will put the motion to a vote. Can I have a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? Declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we're on to, I think, the last. Nope, we've got one more. We've got two more in the planning. So page 201, 9.1.6, planning permit application number P2020 1-147, development of land for a dwelling and shed at 5 existing units on site at 10 Jean Street, Longwood. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Item 9.1.6 refers to the development of land for a dwelling and shed at 10 Jean Street, Longwood. Councillors may be familiar with this site. There are 5 existing units on site that council recently sold, and also there was a part of a subdivision that was undertaken from the pub paddock. So this site does abut the pub paddock at Longwood. It is proposed to build a single-story dwelling on the site. As part of the application and advertising process, there were 2 objections that were received, and following the assessment of this application against the relevant objectives of the planning policy framework, local planning policy framework, the zone and the part overlay on the site, it is recommended that council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit in accordance with the officer's recommendation and also subject to conditions. It is proposed that the dwelling would provide an act for a caretaker's kind of residence for the 5 units that currently exist. There is fencing that has already been established on site as well. So there's a recommendation for councillors' consideration tonight. Fencing on page 102. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Councillor Tingay, and it's page 201. That's all right. I do that all the time. So, councillors, were there any clarifying questions from Director Tingay for this project? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Director, you mentioned a caretaking residence. Is there any requirement that this actually be a caretaker residence, or could it be any other sort of residence, private residence?
Through you, Mayor. No, there isn't. It does lend itself to provide an option to do that. However, through the permit conditions, no, there is no requirement for it to act as that purpose.
So just a follow-up there. They do share a common septic system, so I suppose there would need to be some sort of arrangements between the different bodies to share that. I suppose, but that's not something that's in the purview of council, I imagine.
No. The current site, as it stands, is on one parcel, on one title, and certainly, as you allude to, there is the septic provision is near near where this dwelling is. So certainly, they do share they do share septic provisions, but as I said, it's on the one title as it exists currently.
Thank you. And just another matter, there is a 172, is it a 175 or 172? I forget the numbers, but there is an agreement that goes with this parcel of land which talks about the fencing requirement, which needs to be open style fencing, and I assume that will be applicable behind the actual new dwelling that is proposed to be built.
Through you, Mayor Binks, yes, that is correct. There is a Section 173 agreement, close, on this parcel of land, which stipulates open style fencing, post and rail, and that, to my knowledge, has already been constructed in accordance with the 173 agreement. Certainly, within the officer's report, the applicant does make mention of undertaking plantings as well to offer, an aesthetically pleasing space as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tinga. Yes, Councillor Rayburn.
Yeah, just one question through you, Mayor, to Director. I noticed in the plans here that this new proposed building is on the east side of the units. Would there, if there was going to be a subdivision down the road and they shared a septic, how would that be resolved? I'm just curious on this because septic is a very big issue in our Shire.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Binks. In terms of the septic, do you mean if there was any further subdivision on site? Because this certainly, I would have to confirm whether or not through a Section 173, whether or not there was any further subdivision allowed on this site. So I would need to confirm that first. But also any additional any application for septic is referred to our environmental health officer, who provides the relevant advice in terms of the effluent fields and how that needs to occur within the site, and that also is determined on the level of bedrooms, floor space, etc.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Tingay. Okay, councillors, if there's no further clarifying questions, which I think we may have got them, yep. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysberg.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move the recommendation on page 201 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Is there a seconder to the motion, please? Councillor Murray. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Okay. Councillor Haysberg, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'll just say I think that I don't see any problems with this application. I think it's better to increase the density in our towns where it's already built up rather than expanding the geographical size of our towns. I don't believe that the pub paddock amenity is impacted. I think it's preserved by this development, and the officers have made sure of that. This, as a single dwelling, we cannot stipulate any planning conditions for landscaping because I know one of the objectors did have concerns about the loss of biodiversity in the area. But as per the applicant's response to that particular objector, I hope that they do act in good faith and improve the amenity with landscaping on the site, and that they stay true to their word and follow through with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillor Murray, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'd like to say that I think the amenity of the site will be improved with a modest dwelling of this sort. I think the development of this block is confined and is open enough to allow for an open area there that is in keeping with the what's called the pub paddock there. And I think that it brings to a close a development there that has been probably unfortunate in many of the local people's view, but it does round it off and finish it up neatly. So I support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Were there any further questions? Oh, sorry, any further councillors would like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I will put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? No, and I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, item on page 243, 9.1.7, planning applications received and planning applications determined 1st to the 31st of December 2001 and the 1st to the 31st of January 2022. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. This month we have 2 lots of planning applications received and planning applications determined to consider. They are from the periods of 1 to the 31st of December 2021 and 1st to the 31st of January 2022. For the period of the 1st to the 31st of December 2021, there were 22 new planning permit applications received, and there were also 34 planning permit applications decided on throughout the period. So sorry, I should have acknowledged that was 2 months for us. So from the 1st of December 2021 to the 31st of January 2022, we had 22 new planning permit applications in and 34 planning permit applications decided on during that period. Sorry, just needed to clarify that. Thank you, Mayor Binks. Recommendation on page 243 for council's consideration.
Thank you, Director Tingay. And yes, it's a double whammy this time because we didn't have an ordinary meeting in January. Councillors, do you have any clarifying questions of the officer? Councillor Murray?
Director, on page 247, there is a development there in Withers Street, Longwood, construction of a dwelling. Could you tell me what the number of the of Withers Street that refers to?
Through you, Mayor Binks, I will need to take that on notice and certainly can provide that to you after the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Were there any further questions to the officer? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion and can you state your motion? Councillor Murray. You're on mute.
That's unusual. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 243 as outlined in our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak to the motion? Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? No. Okay, councillors, I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, can I see a show of hands, please? And against? And I declare that one carried. Thank you, councillors. And thank you, Director Tingay, for that marathon run. We're now moving on to page 255 of our agenda, item 9.2.1, Nagambie Ageing Hub. Director Roth, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. So as the report indicates, back in 2021, Council considered a report in relation to a development in Ngambie of an aged-friendly community living environment. And there are a number of aspects to that in a partnership with Ngambie Healthcare, some land issues which we've gone through the appropriate statutory processes. There's a couple of things have changed, and we thought for transparency, it's about just identifying what they are and getting the councils.
Sorry, Director Roth, Reg has put his hand up here.
I'm sorry for this late interruption, but I've just taken advice on whether I have a conflict of interest in this matter, and I have decided that I don't have a conflict of interest, but I just want to state that I am a member of the Senior Citizens and the RSL, but I don't hold any officer position or board position on either organisation, but I just wanted to be known, that's all. Thanks. Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's okay, Councillor Dickinson, and thank you for the clarification. Sorry, Director Roth, we will continue now.
That's fine. Thanks, Councillor Dickinson. So part of the original proposal was a refurbishment of the existing units, but upon investigation it's been found that that's probably not going to work with at least 3 of those. So Ngambie Health are proposing to rebuild them instead of a refurbishment. Also, there was proposal for Ngambie Healthcare to take over the management of the Senior Sits RSL building. We're suggesting here that we actually work with both organisations to make sure that we have a use agreement that satisfies each party's needs, but also allows for community use of the facility, including Ngambie Healthcare for functions and things that they need to do. And the other thing is just to acknowledge that Ngambie Healthcare currently have a gardener on site, so they will continue to maintain the garden area there. So the recommendation on page 256 is to note the changes and authorise the CEO to complete a Section 173 agreement and an MOU with Ngambie Healthcare along those lines.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, are there any questions to Director Roth? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Andrews? You're on mute, Councillor Andrews.
One of those meetings. Thank you. Well, I recommend that I move that the motion on page 256 of the agenda be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Murray, thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. It's important that our vulnerable ageing population are supported within the Shire, and more facilities like this that do support them in various health and allied services I think is welcome, and also gives them some social inclusion and prevents loneliness, which is a real issue in some areas. So I recommend the proposal.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that the Ngambie Ageing Hub looks like a good sort of complex for the area, and I wish our CEO all the best in trying to negotiate the use between multiple groups, and hopefully we can get some great use out of that space for lots of people within the Ngambie community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dickinson.
I think it's great that council have donated land to this project, and with Ngambie growing as rapidly as it is, our health system is in need of this improvement, and I would hope that the further negotiations between the RSL and the senior citizens are successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Did any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Nope. Councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I have a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, moving on to page 262, item 9.2.2, Enabling Tourism Fund Council Contribution. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. On page 262 of the agenda, the report highlights grant funding that is currently available from the state government through a fund that's called Enabling Tourism. Essentially, the Enabling Tourism Fund provides an opportunity for a competitive statewide program that supports planning and feasibility studies for new and innovative tourism infrastructure projects that will increase visitation, drive private investment and deliver more jobs. Within assessing what project to apply for as part of this funding opportunity, Belmadam Hill has been something that council officers have been working on, considering it is a council plan priority. That includes on Belmadam Hill a mountain bike track. Council officers are currently working in collaboration with the Belmadam Hill Mountain Bike Park Committee to undertake further investigation and advocate for the construction of a mountain bike track on Belmadam Hill. This fund will enable us to undertake the necessary planning work that is required, such as feasibility study, environmental assessment, cultural assessment, and further scoping. Also including detailed design to get us to a point where we could be shovel ready for construction. Whilst there is a lot to work through, this grant opportunity does provide us with some leverage for funding to be able to support that planning to come through to fruition. The community group is certainly very active and also engaged within this process, and it's something that the members have been advocating for quite some time. There is a recommendation for council's consideration on page 262 that council provisionally allocate financial co-contribution to the funding submission, and also note any in-kind project management that's also required to be delivered as part of this process. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of Director Tingay? No, I see hands moving, but I don't think they're questions. All right. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysberg?
Can I please move the recommendation on page 262 of the agenda?
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Murray? Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Haysberg, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks to officers for identifying this as a key priority for this grant application. And I thank the community or the committee, the Belmadam Hill Bike Park Committee, for all their work in helping us get this application together. I know that they're a very passionate group of people. It really could be amazing for the Shire to have a mountain bike track on Belmadam Hill. And I know there's been some quite positive conversations with Parks Victoria and Victorian Government already. And yeah, I really hope we get the grant. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. What an exciting opportunity for the town of Uriah, really. Here is a major sort of a hill there just outside of the town, which has been devastated by bushfires and really devastated in terms of its fauna and flora, I suppose. And here is an opportunity to develop that space, to bring it back to life, to develop tourism in the area and to attract visitors again, and to make it a real icon in the area. And I'd like to second this motion and Councillor Haysberg's comments about the Park Committee and their enthusiasm for this particular project over an extended period of time. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to the vote. Can I have a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Item on page 268, item number 9.2.3, Building Better Regions Fund, round 6, council co-contribution. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Recently, in December, the federal government released the Building Better Regions Fund, round 6. This is a nationwide competitive program that supports the government's commitment to create jobs, drive economic growth and build stronger regional communities. It is important to note, councillors, that the submissions to this fund actually closed on the 10th of February. So unfortunately, due to the timing of our council meetings, we were unable to bring this report to you sooner. We're just going to let you know tonight that officers have submitted 3 applications, and those applications were determined in line with council plan priorities and also strategic plan priorities that we have within the council realm. So the 3 projects that were submitted was the Ngambie Employment Precinct, which was under the infrastructure project stream. So that's basically a package of infrastructure works, which includes the sealing of Haywell Road for heavy vehicles and also linking the Ngambie Employment Precinct to the relevant national freeway arterials, and also drainage improvements in the land that is industrial zoned within that area. We've submitted a grant application totalling just over $3 million, and we are asking for a council contribution, or noting a council contribution of just over $1 million. We've also got a grant application in with the state government as well for Haywell Road that was submitted last year. And we are just hopefully we'll hear very, very soon the outcome of that application. We also submitted, as part of the infrastructure projects stream, a travelling art exhibition space. So essentially called an art box, so an opportunity to support community art and culture projects across the Shire, where people and community groups can showcase their artwork within the community. And under the community investment stream, we've been working with our young people to look at developing a youth leadership program with a focus on sustainable agriculture, which obviously is a really important sector within our municipality. So there is a recommendation on page 269 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, were there any questions of Director Tingay? Nope. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Andrews? You are on mute.
Boy, thank you.
No worries.
I move that the recommendation on page 269 of the agenda be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Do I have a seconder to the motion, please? Councillor Dickinson. Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Is there any opposition? No? Okay. Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think the 3 projects that have been put to us by the Director are very worthy and will improve the amenity and the ability of the area to grow, and improve the safety also of keeping trucks off the little by roads around the place and the main streets of the town. So it's I think they're worthy projects to contribute towards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say, I think that it's really great to see a combination of employment and youth for our region, and it just shows that we're trying to cater for everyone. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. Can I have a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? No. And declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 9.3.1 on page 275 of your agenda, the Collaborative Procurement Working Group for Hume Memorandum of Understanding Waste Services Collaboration Procurement. Director off. Can we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. So the waste collection contracts are the biggest operating contracts that Council has, and will soon be complemented by the 4th bin system. Our current contract expires 1st of July 2025, and in the past we have collaborated with a number of other councils in the region to get economies of scale for what is really a huge contract when you put it together regionally. So there is a significant lead time before 2025 to get everything in place, and we've developed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with the other councils and organisations. It just sets out a framework for how we're going to collaborate over the next few years to get the new contracts in place. So we're seeking the commitment to participate in the procurement along with the other councils.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, I'm going bonkers. But councillors, are there any questions of Director Roth on this matter? Nope. Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysberg.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, I'll move the motion. The recommendation on page 275 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Haysberg, did you wish to speak to the motion?
I can see how this memorandum of understanding can streamline the procurement of the services, and hopefully can save some money by doing this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Under the new Local Government Act, it states that all councils should work together to try and get better procurement for their ratepayers, and this is one of those actions to do that. So I support this 100% because at the end of the day, as Director Roth did state, it's one of our biggest contracts that we do run with. It's about $2.4 million of our budget. So I think it really needs to be given the credit to try and minimise our costs and maximise our rubbish return.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? No. And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. Page 281 of our agenda, item 9.3.2, contracts awarded under delegation as approved in Council's 2020-21 budget. And Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Just one item under the contracts awarded under delegation report this evening, and that was a contract that was awarded by our Chief Executive Officer. That contract was contract number 21-22-30, and that was a lump sum contract for the supply and installation of a new solar pump to McGregor Avenue in Nagambie. There's a recommendation on page 281 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of Director Tingay? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Dickinson.
Am I on mute?
You're unmuted.
I'm unmuted. I'd like to move the motion on the recommendation on page 282, I think, that the contract be awarded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. 281 of the agenda.
Actually, 284, I think.
Oh, Dawn, yes.
Just clarifying for Councillor Dickinson, it's actually just to note the fact that that contract was awarded by the CEO.
Okay, thank you. By authority, yep. On page 281, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. And do we have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there any opposition? No. Councillor Dickinson, did you wish to speak to the motion?
It's a solar project and I'm in favour of it.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, I shall put the motion to the vote. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to page 283, item 9.4.1, mid-year budget review 2021-22. Director Off, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. So the mid-year review picks up the actual end-of-year result at 30 June last year. When we did the previous budget, we would have estimated that. We also take into account that items that may have moved around in the 6 months since July. Grants that have been achieved, changes in capital spend. On page 284, there's a summary of the changes and also some of the reasons for variations, both positive and negative. The end result is used as the starting point for the 22-23 budget, which we're currently working through now. So it's there for Council's information, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, are there any questions of Director Roth? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Roth, could I ask a question about attachment number 2, the balance sheet, and the 12 on page 290, and the $12 million property adjustment that's detailed there?
Right, so there's a couple of elements to that. So when we do the budget, we predict things like what our end-of-year capital spend is going to be. Then we need to adjust for that at the end of the financial year. We also do some revaluation of assets, and that's largely a book entry if valuations have moved. So that movement in property plant is a combination of the change between the prediction and the actual, and also some of the adjustments for revaluations. And some of the capital is timing, in that if we didn't complete it last year, we bring it forward into the current year.
Thank you, Director. Could I also ask about the liabilities provisions and the increase of 2.9 million there in the liabilities provisions?
Yeah, that's largely in relation. Well, once again, it's the difference between the forecast and the actual, and this is also timing, because we've adjusted the provision for the Violet Town landfill rehabilitation, carried some of that forward to 2022-23. So that's largely timing. When the actual landfill is rehabilitated, that provision will disappear, and it'll be replaced by a liability for a loan that we take out. So it's just recognising in the books what we estimate the rehabilitation to be, and that includes not just the physical rehabilitation now, but the ongoing monitoring costs for, I think, 30 years we need to allow for. But you'll see that provision hopefully disappear in about 9 months and be replaced by a loan. So.
Thank you very much, Director Roth.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Were there any further clarifications from councillors? Yes, Councillor Haysbert.
I'm just following on from that, Director Roth. So will we be borrowing the money for the ongoing maintenance of the landfill, or will that be coming out of council budget?
The borrowings will only be for the rehabilitation of the landfill. We provide in the operating budget for the ongoing monitoring. It's just that when we recognise the liability in our books, we've got to project it forward 30 years. And then we discount it back to today's value, but we have to recognise. But the actual operating monitoring cost comes out of the operating budget, which is funded partially by the waste charges, as well as the waste collection contracts and things like that.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Any further clarifications from councillors? No? Okay, councillors. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Murray.
Can I move that we note the mid-year budget review as listed on page, as the recommendation listed on page 284 of the agenda?
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Andrews, thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Okay, Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only to say that it appears to be a very sound mid-year review and very detailed, and I thank the Director and his team for providing such. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Andrews, did you wish to speak to the motion?
No, nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. Can I have a show of hands, all those in favour? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to page 318 of the agenda, item 9.5.1, the monthly performance report. Director Bray, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Councillors, in front of you we have a report for 2 months, for December and also for January. There's a couple of highlights and issues that I also want to draw to your attention. But overall, it's been a little bit of a challenging couple of months because of COVID. We obviously, like any employer, we've had staff being affected by contracting COVID, but also having to isolate as well. So it has been a bit of a challenge with staffing levels, and also put on top of that the Christmas holidays and school holidays, and people actually wanting to get away for the first time in a couple of years. It has been a bit of a challenge. But there's a couple of highlights. I've just done a quick total around the building permit activity for December and January, and it's in excess of $9 million for those 2 months, which is quite significant. And the gold ticket goes to Nagambie, which is pretty usual at the moment, but also Hughes Creek as well had a fair bit of expenditure and permit activity approved. In terms of customer requests, we've had, as you all know, we've had a few significant storm weather events, and that has given rise to a few queries about trees being down, potholes, and it's the rain and the weather is sort of causing havoc with our roads. So that's actually causing a bit of escalation in some of those requests. And also related to what I was talking about in terms of building and planning permit activity, the planners are dealing with over 150 requests per month during that time. So that's a significant amount of queries and activities. And I think it also indicates that down the track, we're going to maintain those high levels of applications in front of you. So councillors, you've got a recommendation on page 318 to note the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of Director Bray? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysberg.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to note the monthly performance report.
Thank you.
Is that right? I can't remember what page it's on, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Rayburn, thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Did you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Haysberg?
Oh, just to, I guess, thank all the staff. There's a huge amount of traffic and requests that come through the office, as you can see by this report. And I also just, I mean, it's probably thanks to the CEO for keeping the team together and constantly, you know, I guess being flexible in this COVID climate and working in and out of the office. And I know that that's been a real toll on everyone. So, yeah, thanks for still achieving great results.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillor Rayburn, did you wish to speak to the motion? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Nope. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour? And against? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, moving on to item 10 of the agenda, notice of motions. Do we have any notices of motion, CEO Solomon?
Thank you, Mayor. There are no notices of motion for this evening's agenda.
And I understand we don't have any notices of rescission, urgent business or confidential business either.
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that, CEO Solomon. Councillors, the next meeting of council is scheduled to be held on Tuesday the 15th of March in 2022, commencing at 6 p.m. It is intended that this meeting be held in the Aroa Community Conference Centre. However, this will be dependent on any COVID-19 restrictions which may be in place, and we will update the community closer to the date. So there being no further business, I declare that this ordinary meeting of February the 15th, 2022 is closed at 7:58 p.m. and thank you all councillors, officers and guests and municipal monitors.
Thank you.